Hello, everybody. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to post. Uh, I'm not even in my proper place, but that is okay. We'll be fine here. Um, I had a very busy day, though that looks a little fuzzy to me. Let me see. I don't have any. Here we go. There. Let me go now share this with the Facebook because I was late today. I hope you can still see me. I'm just sharing it to Facebook right now. There we go. And no, that's what we'll do. Anyway, hello, welcome back to The Gentleman Psychic. I am your host. Richard-Lael is one name, not two. If I were just Richard, I'd be a dick. Anyway, I have to also set the alarms. I was late today. We'll do 8 p.m. and then we'll go back down here and do 9 p.m. because that's what we're doing. And then let me share one more time on the YouTube. Library. Let's see, where am I? Your channel. Okay, here we go. Let me share that one. Share, copy link. Oops, done. Share, copy link. Facebook. And there we go. And post. Okay, happy Friday. Hello, Lauren Morgan Richards. Hello, Mike Pope. Hello, Melissa. Welcome. Good evening. I had hoped this month that I would be able to read more Halloween-themed stories for you, but I have been very busy moving. And Friday the 14th. Yes, happy. Oh, wait. No, it's Friday the 13th. Kelly, it's Friday the 13th. Anyway. Good evening, my lovelies. Good evening. I feel like my computer is a little fuzzy lately. I don't know. It's been acting strangely. Anyway, I digress. I am so sorry that I wasn't able to post. I had been very busy all day long, and I didn't even eat lunch. So I had to scarf down some Greek food, some things that I could eat, and now I'm here, which is fine. Nails. Oh, nails are too long. Hit the wrong number. Yes, that makes sense. Happy Friday the 13th or the 14th, and happy long nails. I love that too. All right, my lovelies. I guess normally, well, we've got a couple of minutes. We'll let the clock, we'll let it ring. I'll tell you what I've got going on. I will be in Youngstown, Ohio, coming up very soon, actually, coming up at the end of the month, the 26th through the 29th, I think. Anyway, I will be in Youngstown, Ohio. And I will be here in New Orleans. I do readings, but both in the French Quarter at Apothecary, and I do them in my own home, and I do them via Zoom and various other methods. Anyway, with that, I want to see what time that is. I actually have to make a quick trip down to the French Quarter now because I happen to have found on the street a squirrel that was taxidermied, and I left it there last night. So I have to go back and get that. And then also I had my mail delivered there because why not? Hello, gotta go to work, but it's likely going to be slow as fuck, so looking forward to watching it later. Oh, here we go. I don't know if your sound is cutting out, Mr. Lauren Morgan Richards. Go to stop that there. I ruined the mystery. It's not actually a clock. It's actually on my phone. Anyway, can you hear me okay? Can everybody hear me okay? Thumbs up if you can. I'm going to give you just a couple of moments so that you can hear my sound. Am I coming through clearly? Testing 1, 2, 3. Oh, good. Wonderful. Let's see. I don't know where we were. It's funny that I would start there and then go to the middle of the book. Am I the right one? You know what? Let's start here. Why not? I don't know. I don't remember where we were yesterday, so we'll go here. 11. In the lounge car of the Lark Pullman train from San Francisco to Los Angeles, a tall, thin man with a pale face and flaming hair sat contentedly with 2 highballs and a blonde. And just as I fired, he was saying, the Jaguar sprang between us. The force of the rifle bullet was so great that it carried him right on into the gaping jaws of the lion, so violently that the lion choked to death, thereby saving me 1 bullet. I don't believe it, said the blonde. D. Vance Wimpole smiled. I'll try another one. This evening I read in the paper, much to my astonishment, that a murderous attack has been made on my brother-in-law. He was stabbed almost to death in a room that was locked or watched at every entrance. No one could have got in or out. And there in the middle of the room lay my brother-in-law with a dagger in his back. Do you believe that? No, said the blonde. I don't blame you. Wimpole twirled his drink meditatively. I don't blame you at all. That's why I'm going to Los Angeles, you know. If anybody's really set on murdering my brother-in-law, I wouldn't think of missing the fun for the world. But meanwhile... said the blonde. Meanwhile, the night is young, and first we're going to have another drink, and then there's no telling what may develop. I believe that, said the blonde. Sister Ursula learned nothing fresh from the newspaper accounts, but the facts of Hilary's locked room continued to plague her and distract as she aided Sister Rose in arranging the altar for tomorrow's Mass. Tomorrow would be November 2nd, All Souls' Day, the day that the Church consecrates especially to the memory of the dead. Hilary would recover from his wound. That seemed certain, but murderers are a notoriously persistent breed. By another All Souls' Day, would there be his departed soul to pray for, and perhaps another, a soul that had departed this body in a small chamber filled with gas? And there was the floater Tarbell, so nebulous character, whose soul had already gone to the private judgment. Animula vagla nabula, Sister Ursula thought wryly, and then shifted to a more appropriate church Latin. Requiescat in pace. And is not that, she mused, a fitting prayer for the living too? Let them rest in peace, those who suffer and struggle and strive to kill. Let them rest in peace. Let us rest in peace. Interlude. Ursula Marshall, happily full of formula, kicked her chubby legs. It was a friendly and joyful gesture, but it did not help the process of changing her diaper. Her 4-year-old brother looked on wide-eyed. That looks like fun, maybe, Daddy, is it? Lieutenant Marshall said. What do you think? Terry gave the problem due attention. Maybe, yes, he announced. Can I do it sometime, Daddy? Marshall's large hands moved with surprising deftness. By the time you could reach on the top of the bassinet, I hope your sister won't be needing it. Then could I have another sister, maybe? We'll see about that. Perhaps we ought to get you a practice up for when you have one of your own, And when you do, Terry, remember these words of fatherly advice. The more you help your wife with being a mother, the more time and energy she'll have for being a wife. What's energy? Breakfast, Leona called from the kitchen, thereby sparing her husband the grievous semantic problem of defining the term with no visible referent. You see, Terry, he elucidated as they sat at table, because I got up and gave Ursula her early bottle, your mother had time, he omitted the confusing new word, to whip me up a buckwheat batter. I want a buckwheat batter, Terry announced inevitably. There, dear, said Leona soothingly. You've got your nice mush. Leona, Marshall firmly overrode Terry's outspoken comments on the nice mush. Did you get anywhere sleeping on it? Nowhere at all. That does usually work with mystery novels. I read them up to where the detective says, all the clues are now in your hands, my dear who's it? And then I go to sleep, and in the morning I know the answer. But this didn't work out. Maybe it's because all the clues aren't in our hands. That's just it. There aren't any clues, but a rosary and a photograph. Everything's so God. Leona glanced sideways at their son. Terence. So terribly nebulous. And a corpse is a darn sight more cooperative than living victim who sits calmly back, twiddling his press notices and murmurs gently, all right, now you tell me who did it. To most children, a corpse at the breakfast table would be unbearably exciting, but Terry was too young yet to realize how romantically thrilling his father's profession would seem to others. Murder and corpses were just funny things that his parents talked about a lot. He now barely heard a word and went right on with the mush, which he had remembered that he liked. What I keep coming back to, Leona reflected, is Sister Ursula's reference to the invisible man. She doesn't say things at random, so I reread the Chesterton story last night. Does it help? It's the same moral as so many of his, of course, the easy danger of overlooking the obvious. The invisible man is the postman. All the witnesses swear that no one came near the house, and of course, they never think of the man who comes and goes all the time. But who's your invisible man here? You checked on the maid? Naturally. And I know this sounds funny. Marshall laughed. I see what you mean. She is the invisible. I knew you would laugh at me. But remember, the whole possible. Dr. Barringer put it in another way in one of his scientific researches. Eliminate the impossible, then if nothing else remains, some part of the impossible was possible. I think that might be more helpful here. But to please you, darling, I'll check on the good sister. Her motive, I suppose, was to avenge the insult to Sister Patatina in the Braille work. How many times, Terence, have I heard you say, juries convict on evidence, not on motives? All right. But I doubt if Sister Felicitas could stay awake long enough for a murder. And what are the chances of some more buck buckwheat batter? Terry crowed. Jenny Green received Marshall with friendly "Good morning, Lieutenant," and to you, Miss Green. Veronica's at the hospital, she explained. Marshall repressed a sigh of relief. It's chiefly you I wanted to see anyway. You and that room. Me? How can I help you? But I'd be so glad if I could. You're Mr. Folk's secretary, weren't you, Miss Green? The girl shuddered. Please don't say were, Lieutenant. You make it sound as though whoever it was had succeeded. Sorry. A professional habit. I guess this living corpse situation is a trifle irregular. You are then. Yes. Then might I ask you to go through your files and make a list of everyone Mr. Folks ever had any serious financial or literary disputes with? She smiled. I'm afraid that will take a while. I'm not surprised, but meanwhile, I'll see if I can prize some secret out of the devilish study. There's a time-honored dictum, Marshall thought, at the as he stared at the unresponsive walls, that the more complex a situation has been made, the easier it is to solve. The simply conceived crime in the brain twister, which is doubtless true enough, most complexities unravel instantly once you get hold of the right end of the thread. But when there are no threads, now there has to be reason for any locked room situation. Criminals do not create locked rooms out of sheer devilment. The simplest reason is to make the death look like suicide. But if that were the case, Hillary would have been stabbed in the front or the side. That was out. So was a framed accident. The reason might be to give criminal an alibi. It had been the Harrington case, but of possible suspects so far, the only ones with alibis at all had such impeccable ones that they could not be questioned for an instant. Perhaps in Miss Green's list. The reason might be to give the criminal, let's see. Or there is one kind of locked room without a reason. That's the accidental one. Never planned by the criminal, some little thing might have gone wrong by chance to produce this effect of apparent impossibility. And if nothing remains, some part of the impossible was, in fact, possible. Marshall clucked irritably, left the study, and followed the sound of typing. He found Miss Jenny Green methodically hunting through files and copying down names with a line or two to identify the case of trouble in each case. She looked up and asked, "Yes, Lieutenant. Did you, Miss Green, ever grab a stick by the wrong end and then find the end wasn't there? Am I supposed to answer?" Rhetorical. It's what I've been doing. I'm grabbing at the factual clues, and I don't have enough about people. Maybe you can help me. Jenny waved the hand at the typewriter. But I don't know anything about those people. To me, they're just names to type, the heads of letters. I don't mean those people necessarily. I mean Mr. Folks, his wife, his brother-in-law, you. Lieutenant, surely you don't... I don't suspect anybody yet. I don't unsuspect anybody either. But the whole thing focuses around Hillary Folks, and I've got to know this Folks focus, this Folks lore, if you will, forgive me. I'll try. I mean, try to tell you. I don't think I can forgive you, but sit down, and you can light your pipe if you want. The only furniture beside the chair at the typing table consisted of a bed and a low boudoir chair covered with flowered chintz. Marshall chose the latter and did not feel so out of place as one might have expected. It was almost identical with the chair in which he gave Ursula her bottles. I've gathered, Jenny Green began slowly, how people feel about Cousin Hillary. Sometimes I can even understand it a little, but he's been so different with me that well, it isn't only that I owe a lot to him. My mother was some sort of 42nd cousin of Fowler Folks. My father was killed in the First War. Before I was born, Mother went back to grandfather, and I was born at the vicarage. Mother wasn't ever really well after that, and when grandfather died... Oh, I'm not going to tell you the whole story, but before Hillary came to England and decided to track down his transatlantic relatives, there were days when we didn't eat. So I feel gratitude, all right. But more than that, too, Hillary is, well, he is nice to me, quite aside from being good to me, if you understand. I think I do. But to make you see him, You will have to go back. You'll have to see Fowler folks. Yes, and Darrell Wimple, too. I never knew them, but from their books and from hearing their children talk. You must read those books, Lieutenant. Folk's autobiography and the Wimpole memoir. They might help. I shall. But if meanwhile you Fowler folks, well, he was a lot like Dr. Derringer, except for his appearance. He looked very much like Hillary. But I suppose you remember pictures of him. Yes. But he acted as though he did have a barrel chest and black spade beard and a silver-headed cane. He boomed and dominated and crushed people with his trenchant wit. It wasn't a pose. He was the real thing, a major personality. And Darrell Wimpole, that's Mrs. Folk's father. Yes, he was a major personality that didn't come off. He'd started with a freak success in some strange mathematical theory that sounded brilliant and was later disproved. He wrote a little and kept being on the verge of success. He was great at dominating salons until anyone of interest appeared. Then, when he met folks, he changed entirely because just as a Boswellian satellite, do you understand it? Because he couldn't succeed in being what he wanted. He could write about his perfection in folks because he was simply a folks Menke, whatever that is. Does it make sense? Yeah, I think so. And the children of these men, it's as though they were only as so much vital energy, so much perfection, and father and son had to split it between them. Hillary's father, you see, achieved himself completely. So Hillary lives on his father's energy and is nothing in himself. I wasn't going to put it so cruelly, Lieutenant, but that's much what I meant. And Wimpole's son, what's his name? Vance? Vance. Jenny Green leaned back and clasped her hands around her knees. Her eyes blurred away from their usual alertness. Now, Vance. At that point, the doorbell rang, and Alice is still out marketing. She jumped to her feet. We'll finish this later, Lieutenant. Marshall looked at the sheet on the typewriter. Scads of names, many unfamiliar. Webb Marlowe, Cleve Cartmill, Austin Carter. But he knew that already. Matt, too, of course. Marshall listened and heard Miss Green, a complete stranger. I'd like to speak to Mr. Folks, business manager. I'm afraid Mr. Folks is his own business manager, and God knows that's true enough, thought Marshall, trying to place the not quite unfamiliar voice. Then it identified itself. My name is Finn. Fenn M. Halstead. Finn. There was a smile in the girl's voice. Oh, yes, I remember typing letters to you. In fact, I was just about to refer to that file. So the little agent, too, had had his troubles with Hillary. Hardly surprising. Just perhaps worth looking into. Marshall stepped out into the living room. There were two men at the door. The second was that deceptively young and callow-seeming individual who was, Matt had informed him, unexcelled at either hack or creative fantasy. Henderson, that was the name. Finn registered surprise. Mr. Marshall, he exclaimed. I'm afraid we met under false pretense, Finn. The handle is Lieutenant. Homicide. Miss Green, is it all right with you if I ask these gentlemen to step in? Certainly, Lieutenant. I'll finish that list for you. Thank you. Please come in, gentlemen. Finn sidled in uneasily. Henderson seemed lankily unperturbed by the lieutenant's status, but somewhat awed by the apartment. I want, Marshall explained, to ask you boys a few questions. First, let's get the name straight. What besides Finn? M. Halstead, and it's Phyn. The M stands for, Finn hesitated, and Henderson laconically supplied Michael. Marshall grinned. And I'll bet the Finn used to be Finn. Can't blame you for changing it. Mickey Finn isn't a good name for a man in a position of trust, like an agent. Does anybody, Finn asked ruefully, trust an agent? That I can't say, but I'm willing to try. Now tell me just why you should choose this bright morning to visit the scene of the crime. Finn wisely chose not to answer the implication. I don't know how much you understand about the literary business, Lieutenant. The pulp racket, said Joe Henderson. A little, Finn. And by the time this case is over, I expect to be an authority. But what should I understand to account for your call? You do at least know that standing of the Dr. Derringer opie, of course, well, you are. It was then that Veronica Fawkes threw open the hall door and caroled joyously, Look who's here! When she saw the lieutenant, her voice fell and repeated in a markedly different tone, Just look who's here. But her reaction hardly mattered. The pale and wry man behind her took over and dominated the scene. Jenny Green had abandoned her typing and come at Veronica's call. Now she ran eagerly into the thin Matt's arms and said Vance, very simply and happily, and D. Vance Wimpole was kissing her and greeting Finn and Henderson and greeting and getting introduced to Marshall and demanding unlimited rounds of drinks all at once. The next half hour was something nightmarish for Marshall. He wanted to talk with his brother-in-law for at least two reasons. First, because he might have information, being in the trade of Hillary's business relations with science fictionists and being in the family of Hillary's relations with his wife and cousin. Miss Green's family narrative, though clear and suggestive, could be always bear checking against another source. And second, because Marshall was markedly interested in just where the hell Wimpole himself had been for the past several weeks. But there was no opportunity for coherent questioning. Wimpole had welcomed Marshall eagerly enough, delighted to meet the man who's going to unlock Hillary's locked room. Rotten taste in a murder to go out of his way to be difficult, isn't it? But then he was off on the narrative of his travels, or talking shop talk with the agent and the other writer whose presence here at the Fawkes apartment he seemed to accept with infinite callousness. And sandwiched in between narrative and shop talk were fraternal kisses for Veronica, affianced kisses for Jenny, and a meticulous attention to replenishing of glasses, of which guests that Wimpole was host here rather than guest. One unasked question he did in a way answer. And I'm having the polar bear mounted. Make a wonderful rug for you, Ron. Or should I have it till Jenny and I set up housekeeping? Which, by the way, Joe, beautiful idea hit me. What happens if you mount a werewolf skin rug? Does it keep changing so you every so often look down and find you're treading on human parchment? Don't think I'll use it. Too busy. You can have it if you want it. Veronica shuddered. Grisly. Isn't it? Almost as bad as good mother, as lock a room and in it stab my brother-in-law. Of course, but that wouldn't rhyme. Which, by the way, Lieutenant, where do I stand on the suspect list? High, said Marshall in the presence of Vance Wimpole. Anyone tended to become as laconic as Joe Henderson. I thought so. They say you're a shrewd man. It wouldn't be hard to see what a pretty motive I have, financially, I mean. You can disregard the incest angle, so here. This is what they left me in of my ticket and Pullman stub. Proves I was in San Francisco yesterday. Just thought you might like to know. Keep them if you wish. Press them with your dance programs. And I did write you, Ron, about the amazing sect of Christianized voodoo I found in Santo Domingo. Marshall slipped the stubs back in their envelope and tucked them into his wallet. He'd have them checked, of course, but he had fairly precise estimation of their worth without that. He only half listened to the narrative, colorfully included, incredible as it was, while he surveyed the other listeners. They were themselves not too attentive to the words, but with one exception, they were rapidly fixed on the speaker. Jenny Green looked devotedly glad at this reunion, which was to be expected. What was less expected was that Wimpole's sister gazed upon him quite as devotedly, quite as hell, you might almost say amorously, as his fiancée. Finn's interest was harder to analyze. He regarded D. Vance Wimpole almost as he might an unanticipatedly favorable contract, and seemed to be studying him, forming in his shrewd mind the proper approach to extract the last drop of profit. But why? Was this purely some angle of the agency business, or did it somehow tie in with the folks' situation? The one exception was Joe Henderson. Marshall had not seen him notice a woman before, not as woman, that is, Miss Green, Miss Carter, Concha, even Leona. He had hardly more than glanced at, but now his stare adhered fixedly to Veronica Folks. Marshall would have liked to stay. There were possibilities that might develop here with another round or two, but the presence of a police official would simply act as whatever was the opposite of the catalyst, and, damn it, he was beginning to think in quasi-scientific jargon of these boys. And besides, there was plenty of routine, both Folks and Tarbell waiting for him at headquarters. At the point in Wimpole's narrative where the Christianized voodoo sect had developed is a schism on the question of whether it was valid to baptize zombies. Marshall rose. "I've some other matters to check up on," he said regretfully, "but I want to see you later, Mr. Wimpole. Where are you staying?" "Here, naturally." It was Veronica Folks who answered. "I'll sleep in the study," Wimpole explained. "Let you know, Lieutenant, if anything says... Now, we're locked in for the night. I'll phone you then. And when is your husband expected home from the hospital, Mrs. Folks? Tomorrow or the next day. They say he's recovering wonderfully." "Grand," Wimpole cried. "We'll have a recovery party, and it fits magnificently. Chanterelle, you know my mad friend over in Caltech." "You have mad friends every place," Jenny murmured. "I know. Won't you have fun being a hostess to them? But Chanterelle has his model rocket car and ready for a demonstration. He's been holding it up till I got here. How's about it? We'll make it Hillary saved from the jaws of death party. You'll come, of course, Joe, and Finn. I'll ask some of the other fantasy boys, the Carters and the Bouchers, and who's that, the bright new protege of Austin's? Matt Duncan. I know." He added maliciously, "They'll love to celebrate Hillary's good health. And by all means, you, Lieutenant." He beamed all over his pale face and drained his glass. If only he could make the party complete, invite the murderer, but maybe that can be arranged, as indeed it was. Sister Ursula kept the Folks case from her mind during the day. Services and All Souls' Day, visits to the cemetery in Long Beach, and the grave by her father, that stalwart Ion captain of police. But now, as she read the office of Compline before retiring, it reoccurred to plague her. Oddly enough, it was the Q Habitat that set her off. The 19th Psalm, the numbering, of course, that of the Douay version. In the King James, this psalm is the 91st. This noble hymn of confidence in the Lord seemed to accord so curiously with Hilary Folks' trust, apparently so well deserved in something that protected him. Scalpulus sui oberum brat tibi. With his pinions will he shelter thee, and under his wings thou shalt be secure. Like a shield his truth shall guard thee. Thou shalt not fear the terrors of night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the plague that prowleth in the dark, nor the noonday attack of the demon. It had been almost noon, the attack, hadn't it? And was this as reasonable an explanation as any? 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, yet no evil shall come nigh thee. He was given his angels charge over thee. The favorite line in the devil's, this, Sister Ursula thought. He quoted it to Christ on the pinnacle of the temple, and was answered by a brilliantly twisted quotation which put him in place as a scriptural authority. But was it chance that the tempter chose this line? Was there not something dangerous to certain kind of confidence? There was something here, something in this confused melange of reflections on Psalms, and angels, and devils, and Hilary, and religion. Sister slipped away mockingly. At last she turned back to her bravery, and went on to the Nunc Dimittis. Lieutenant Marshall was checking over the reports on the rentals and sales of beards. They were not helpful. No beards of the Derringer type had been out rental at the time of the bomb episode. And of the 8 sales in the past year, only 1 was to a private individual, Bernice Carter. The rest had been to amateur theatrical groups. The damnable thing was that it did not even narrow it down to the Carters. The bomb sender might have owned such a beard for years. He might have bought it or rented it out of town. He might conceivably have improvised it himself. There had been equally little luck on the cyanide. The poison register would be a great and valuable institution if there were any reasonable certainty that the individuals signing it did not simply make up their names and propose in the spirit of free improvisation. If you have a suspect with a good case proved against him, otherwise you may be able to trap him on falsified entry with the aid of handwriting expert, whom the defense will, of course, match with one quite as eminent, but a source of much needed leads. The system is hopeless. Marshall had checked over the 2 registers himself in moody restlessness and had grown weary of the number of people in Los Angeles who were ever troubled with the rats and wanted arsenic. He liked, however, the arsenic entry which signed George Spevlin and read not rats but mice. He wondered what actor with a cruel gag sense had decided to dispose of superfluous girls, and rather hoped that the piquant case might fall to his lot in time. But there was no trace anywhere of any names so far involved with Hilary Folks, save, of course, for Carter cyanide. This, too, had been brought by Bernice, who seemed effectively to shelter her husband from the distracting crudeness of shopping. Marshall was growling into his own non-existent beard when the phone rang. Borgen speaking, he heard when he picked up the receiver. Think I've got a lead for you on that bomb of yours. Can you come to the jail now? Be right over, Marshall promised. Any kind of fresh lead sounded good. He needed to be clear in his head. I got thinking it over, Borrigan explained in welcome, and it seemed to me like there was something familiar about that screwy way whoever made that bomb attached the fuses. Then last night I was drinking beer down at Lucky Spot, and the boogie woogie playing dinge was going good, and all of a sudden it hits me. Louis Schlack, remember the Austerlitz case? Marshall nodded. The bomb was Louis's work, though a smart mouthpiece got him off, and it had the same fuse fastenings. So I decided to have a talk with Mr. Schalk. How'd you get him to talk? He's been branching out lately. Louis has. He's a good chemist, and there's pretty strong evidence he's been making counterfeiting inks. So we pulled him in and talked to him about how we'd turn him over to the feds unless he came clean. And he came clean? Borrigan frowned. I don't know. You talk to him, Lieutenant. A half hour later, Marshall had learned little beyond an interesting study in how an addiction to cheap wine can turn a promising chemist into a sordid criminal. Louis Schlack was little and thin and white-haired. His pale blue eyes showed hardly any remaining trace of intelligence, but his hands were as deft, skilled hands of a good artisan. Honest, Lieutenant, he repeated for the 17th time. That's all I know. The letter contained nothing but $100 bill and the instructions. That's all. Repeat them again. I should put the unset bomb and directions for setting it in a parcel locker in the PE station at 6th and Main. Then I should mail the key to general delivery. I'd get another 100 after. And I did, too. No signature to the letter? No. Anything you remember about the typing? Should I? A typewriter's a typewriter, ain't it? Marshall shrugged hopelessly. And you went ahead just on that. Why shouldn't I? Most people want bombs. They don't want you should know who they are, do they? You get orders like that often? Shock's thin lips tightened. You're booking me on this one charge. All right. I'll take it that means yes, but you've got your constitutional rights. So, and how do people find out about your profession? Schlack was silent. Hell, Lieutenant. Sergeant Borrigan broke in. Everybody knows about Louis. Yes, but not in circles. Not in the circles I'm concerned with. Well, one more try. Tell me, Schlack, what was the name at the general delivery? Schlack was silent. Sorry. Borrigan grunted disapproval. Don't think he'd give his real name, do you? No, but the phony a man chooses can be just as indicative as the true name. What was it, Schlack? Louis Schlack frowned, trying to remember. Got it. He said at last, it was Dr. Garth Derringer. While Marshall expressed himself, his eyes rested on the card on which Schlack had been booked. Suddenly, his self-expression ceased, and his face took on the almost of pleasure. One lead, one thing that fitted. Residence, Elite Hotel. In the Elite Hotel, Jonathan Tarbell had died. The Princess Aurelia shrank back against the gem-encrusted wall, her golden tresses gleaming brighter than the gems. Shangul, high priest of the Xanthopsis, drew yet nearer and extended a lean hand, and all 7 of its bony fingers avidly twitching. From this hidden spaceport, his harsh voice droned on exultantly. Our ships used to blast off for Atlantis in those glorious days when Terra was but a fragment of our colonial empire. We have not lost our cunning through the millennia, as Terra will learn its disaster. The fleshless hand clutched the smooth arm of the Princess Aurelia's firm, warm flesh, and as she trembled. And you shall be all this with me, my dear. You shall reign with me. He broke off and cackled, a command in Xanthopic. To the 3-armed regalian servant who stood in attendance. No, Princess Aurelia implored them. Let me go. Let me return to my own people. To your lover, you mean? The high priest snarled. to that clever Captain Comet, who will yet learn that he has met his match in me. No, you shall not go, you shall be mine, down through the elm of the triumph of Xanthosus. An agonized scream burst from Zorelia's throat. Is there no escape, she moaned. Will no one save me? The slavering lips of the mad high priest neared hers, and then the Princess Aurelia beheld a strange thing. The third arm of the Regalian servant fell to the ground. Another arm twitched, the horn from his forehead. Captain Comet, she cried joyously, and knew no more. That's what I call timing, Joe Henderson observed, when people knock on the door just when I reach a tagline. M. Halstead Finn said, I'll answer it, and jumped up from his couch eagerly. He opened the door, saw the visitors, and grinned like a cat given the freedom of a fish cannery. We're on our way to bring Hillary home, Vance Wimple announced as he and his sister entered. Thought we'd stop off and remind you about Chantrell's rocket party. It's this Friday. Fine, said Joe Henderson. You're the damnedest one, Joe. I've never seen you miss a party, and yet I think you love them. But you never say a word, and you drink maybe 2 beers. I have my fun, Joe said. I guess you must. How goes the cosmic captain? All right. Finn broke the ensuing silence. Have you got a minute to spare, Wimple? Because if you have, yes, I've been wanting to talk further about that business you mentioned. Got another room here. We could go in the kitchen. Okay, Ron. You mind entertaining Joe? Veronica Folks had not said a word since she came in. Her brother's presence seemed to subdue her, but now that they had vanished with Finn, she came alive again. She crossed her legs, she knew they were good, and leaned forward. She knew they were good too. Don't you think Vance is stimulating, Mr. Henderson? He makes life so much more vivid, so much more real. He's a good Joe, said Joe. He has so much fun, and yet he does so much work too. I like a man who does something, who really is somebody, and not just a filial ghost. A man like Vance who makes all his money from writings that he really writes himself. You write too, don't you, Mr. Henderson? Some. Joe Henderson seemed even more tongue-tied than usual, and he was having trouble keeping his eyes, polite. Writers are so understanding. They know about people. They understand how women like me ticks. You do understand, I think, don't you? Said Joe Henderson sympathetically. I knew you would. You'd see how lonely I am, or was until Vance came. And soon he'll be off again to Lord knows where, and won't you come and have tea with me some afternoon, Mr. Henderson? Just you and me and Pitty Sing. I'd like to very much, Mrs. Folks. There was an eagerness behind Joe's stiffly formal phrase. Mrs. Folks. But you must call me... No. Everybody calls me Ron. You shall call me Nicky, Joe. Nicky, said Joe Henderson. His voice sounded as though it were changing. Then the room was full of D. Vance Wimple. He glanced at Joe's manuscript, smiled and nodded, downed the drink he was still carrying, shook hands with Finn, clapped his fellow author on the back, took his sister's arm affectionately, and steered her out the door, all the while recounting an anecdote concerning the habits of Galapagos turtle, which was equally improbable and improper. When the quiet had returned, Finn thrust his hand out at Henderson. Congratulate me, Joey. From this time forth, M. Halstead Finn collects 10% of every D. Vance Wimple check, including the Scandinavian, and plus 5 pseudonyms. The startling statements had to be repeated before Henderson took it. When he did, he whistled. That's good going. How did you do it? Do you know where the body's hidden? Yeah, something like that, said Finn smugly. Cousin Hilary taking his nap. Oh, Cousin Hilary's taking his nap, said Jenny Green. I know he's anxious to see you, Lieutenant, but the doctor was very strict about a properly sensible convalescence. Commendable. And Mrs. Fawkes? She and Vance went out together. Poor kid, Marshall thought. Your fiancé goes gallivanting with his sister while you stay home to tend to Hilary's correspondence. But a man like Vance Wimpole must have irresistible appeal of color after that vicarage in poverty. Well, he said aloud, that's all too good. Miss Green, you and I can resume the conversation we were having the other day, unless you're too busy. I should be catching up on, but then I suppose this is really doing Hilary's work too, isn't it? It's very well, Lieutenant. Come in and make yourself comfortable. The latter injunction Marshall found it impossible to obey in that room, but he lit his pipe and settled down to listening. Let's see. How much had I told you when those pulp people interrupted us? That Mr. Henderson is an odd one, isn't he? But he seems, I don't know, rather sweet. Marshall laughed. It's hard for a man to see what adjective applied to another man, but you may be right. Well, you were telling me about Wimpole and Fawkes and how they affected their children. Oh, yes. One thing I don't think I'd mentioned about Mr. Wimpole was that he is an atheist. He was an atheist. I don't mean just one of the ordinary kind of atheists that so many people are or think they are. He was crusading atheist who took it for religion. He was always quoting Tom Paine and Bob Ingersoll, though there was, I gather, more of Ingersoll than Paine in him. And that worked in his children, though, in different ways. It gave Vance his independence, that fine, rational self-reliance that he has. He found what he needed inside himself, but Ron didn't. She's the sort of person who needs something because she's the sort of person who needs something because please don't think it petty, but because she isn't anything in herself, she gropes and fumbles and reacts to a situation the way she thinks someone might react, only she isn't really anyone. Or is that clear at all? I think it is, a little. Say that we all, even if we can't accept capitalized God, still need a lowercase God of some sort. Mr. Fawkes found it in his father, and Mr. Wimpole in himself, but Mrs. Fawkes is still hunting, or has she... Isn't it true that to some extent she finds it in her brother? Jenny Green hesitated. Yes, a little perhaps. But Vance he's a hard god to worship. He doesn't stay put on the altar. You never know quite where you are. He can give you an excitement, but not peace. He's a god for a Manot, but not for a nun, if you follow. And Mr. Fawkes, what about him? For his wife's lowercase god, Jenny frowned. I don't think that Ron understands Cousin Hilary. I don't think that they understand each other. Tell me while we're at this. It seems odd, Marshall pairing, how? I think Cousin Hilary married Ron because she was her father's daughter. I gather she was more like Darrell Wimpole when she was younger. His atheism was enough for her then, and she felt or seemed to feel much as he did about Fowler Fawkes. I think Hilary wanted, well, should we say a high priestess for his religion? And she failed him? You can get tired of anything, Lieutenant. How Ron says all she needs for hell is a world where all the books are by Fowler Fawkes and all the films are about Dr. Derringer. Marshall puffed slowly at his pipe. That perverse, use of Dr. Derringer as the murderous bomb sender, would not that appeal to just such a sentiment, a resentment, to use the symbol to destroy the reality? I've been talking more than I should, said Jenny Green. More than I ever do. In fact, but you, as you can see how important this is to me, if any word I can prevent some devil from killing Cousin Hillary, have I said anything helpful? I'm damned, said Marshall, if I know. That Miss Green, Marshall said, thinks you're sweet. Joe Henderson was sitting cross-legged on a cushion before the stone fireplace. Miss Green, he looked up innocently. Hillary's cousin, secretary? Oh, yes, over there today. Lieutenant, I went to, I went to Mrs. Folks, asked me to have tea, and well, your policeman almost didn't let me in. That's as it should be. But am I a suspect? Austin Carter laughed. Put Joe up on top of your list, Lieutenant. Marshall looked puzzled. Why? We've just been over all the Hillary complications of Manana Literary Society, and thanks, Carter, for your cooperation. But it seems to me that Henderson is about the only one to emerge with a clean bill of health. Ah, but you see, Lieutenant, we agreed, did we not, that the locked room attempt was made with a time machine, and Joe is our greatest authority on gadgets like that. The time tunnel in the current surprising, Marshall smiled. That is suspicious and motive. Mrs. Folks, you should have seen Joe just after that tea party. Joe Henderson, though seated, seemed to give the effect of shuffling his feet embarrassedly. But he didn't meet Mrs. Folks until after the attack. Lieutenant, how prosaically literal can you be? If the whole business was hocussed by a time machine, why shouldn't the motivation arise after the fact? All more ingenious a crime. Alibi yourself by going back in time when you had no reason to kill. I'm afraid Henderson Carter has bared your dread secret. Better confess. Joe Henderson shook his head. I'm not that smart. But seriously, Lieutenant, Austin Carter went on, you ought to read Time Tunnel. The Joe being non-hack, and it's a beautiful job. One of the swellest novels to hit science fiction in years. You really think so? Joe Henderson, Carter's professional senior by 10 years, looked as beamishly pleased as an amateur actor who has just received a kind word from the Luntz. Indeed, I do. Henderson is still the old master when he wants to be. And that Storm Darroway, dear God, what a wench. If I could meet a woman like that, 1,000 interplanetary civilizations could smash, and much I'd care. The heroine of Time Tunnel, Marshall asked. Of course not. You don't know your Henderson, Lieutenant. The villainess, the heroine, is duller than dishwater, you see. One of the Henderson trademarks is the two women. They're the same two-part that run through all Rider Haggard too. One represents virtue, and one blonde and beautiful, the good and dull. The other represents vice and is black and is beautiful and evil and marvelous. It's always puzzled me why Joe can write only wicked women. Could I play at amateur psychoanalyst? Perhaps he has a secret conviction that women are evil, or can therefore write only an evil woman convincingly. Carter nodded. Pretty. What do you say to that, Joe? Joe Henderson hesitated. I don't know. He drawled at last. I guess it's just subconscious belief that the vagina has teeth. Yes, said the clerk at the Elite Hotel. It'd be easy enough for anybody hereabouts to pick up who Louis Schlock was. Of course he was acquitted on the Austerlitz business, but we all knew what his racket was. And do you think, Marshall asked, that Tarbell knew? I can't say. He didn't talk much to people, but he could have easily. Marshall nodded. This fitted all right. Whoever had known Tarbell visited him here and killed him. Could have learned where the order of a bomb. Oh, and Lieutenant, yes, you told me to tell you if anybody was asking for Tarbell. So, well, there was somebody, not exactly asking for him, but asking about him. Good man. Who? It was one of the nuns that came around here on social work sometimes. We've got a poor lunger up on the 4th, and she was fixing up to get him sent away. So we got to talking about the murder, and she asked questions about this man, used to visit Tarbell on occasions. And she showed me a picture and said, did that look like him? And damned if it didn't. Marshall's eyes popped. He was not surprised that Sister Ursula's proud curiosity had led her to investigate the elite. But where on earth could she have secured a picture of any of the suspects? You were so vague in your description, he objected. What was it like? I'd almost forgotten, the clerk apologized. So many people come and go, but when I saw the picture, it all came back to me. She left it with me to show you. It's around here somewheres. Oh, here it is. He handed it over. It was a page torn from a movie fan magazine, a striking still of that admirable actor, Norval Pritchard, in his great role as Dr. Derringer. Let's see where we are here. Oh, we're actually we'll finish this little. So there are at last pieces of the jigsaw, said Marshall, as he whisked his brush over the coat of his best suit. And tonight you'll meet the people. Leon executed some complicated maneuvers before the dressing table. With your next bonus, you're going to have to buy me a full-length mirror. Does my slip show? Just a little. It's nice of Mr. Chantrell to ask us to his party, and I'm curious to see this Hillary of yours. I never get a chance to meet the victims in your cases while they're still warm. I don't know that warm's the word for Hillary. A rocket party. That should be fun. And rocket could be symbolic for the clearing up a case, a loud noise, and spreading light. Beauty falls from the air, Marshall said, and added questioningly another quotation. Beauty is truth? Well, we'll see. Leona was listening to shouts and murmurs off. Oh my, a howl. I'll bet it's a burp left over from the last bottle. Will you check, dear, while Lieutenant Marshall picked up the screaming daughter, put her against his shoulder, and patted her resolutely with no result, then sat her down in the low chintz-covered chair, held her on his knee, and shook her gently. The internal rattle was deafening. Ursula stared questioningly in her father's face and parted her lips as though to emit a desired burp. Then her gaze switched. There had been no extraneous sound to distract her. Nothing had moved, but something in the corner of the room demanded her attention. She stared fixedly at the thing and followed its slow and hesitant movements. Her father shook her again. Don't pay any attention to that, darling, he said. Make with a burp. Be a good girl. Just as Leona entered the room, the baby relaxed her attention and burped splendidly. She saw a thing, Marshall said. I don't know how the child authorities account for the phenomenon, but it always gives me the creeps when she becomes so damned absorbed in something that isn't there. Maybe it's our invisible man, Leona suggested. Gives me goose flesh, he insisted. I'll bet some of our fantasy boys could work it into a very pretty omen. Of what? Of what? That, my darling, is what we're going to this party to find out. Come on. And then we go into the 9th day, but that is where we pick up next week because we are at time. See? Told you. All right, my lovelies. Thank you for all of your comments, your likes, your shares. Thank you for joining your Friday nights with me here. I hope you have a great week. I will see you on Wednesday for Witches Movie Coven. Good night.